Human rights group Amnesty International says 14 civilians were killed during 5 U.S. airstrikes in Somalia in the last 2 years, an allegation the U.S. military strongly denies. For more on the civilian casualty allegation, VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb joins me live from the military headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Now, Carla, how did Amnesty International arrive at their conclusion?
Well, Vincent, Amnesty International took a look at the U.S. military record with more than 100 airstrikes in Somalia, no civilian casualties, they claim, and they decided they needed to investigate. They looked at 15 claims of civilian casualties. They ended up throwing out 10, they told me, based on either untruthful sources or information that did not provide evidence to support the claims, and they settled on these 5 cases where 14 civilians were killed. They interviewed dozens of people. They looked at photographs, satellite images, and they came to that conclusion. The U.S. military, however, says that as a matter of policy, it shows restraint when conducting strikes in order to protect civilians. It said that it did its own assessment on all of these strikes except for one, and that it found there were no civilian casualties. It pointed out that Amnesty has its means, but the United States military also has means that are not available outside of the military, like cyber operations, intelligence, and intercepted communications. And they even claimed in one of these instances that the U.S. military did not strike at all at that location or on that day.
Now, can you share with us some examples of those allegations?
Sure, they gave the 5 examples. There was one that was pretty cut and dry. The military said it was on December 9th, 2018, the most recent one. Amnesty International claims that a farmer who was irrigating his crops was killed during an airstrike. The U.S. military was actually on the ground while al-Shabaab was targeting local Somali partners, and they say that wherever that strike hit, it was hitting people who were fighting and shooting back at the Somali partners. Then there's some other that aren't quite as clear. On November 12, 2017, in Dar es Salaam, Amnesty International claims that 3 farmers were killed. They were irrigating their farms at night, and they say that an airstrike by the United States took them out. The U.S. military says that these 3 farmers were members of al-Shabaab, and the details get a little muddy because the witnesses there say that these farmers were not with al-Shabaab, but al-Shabaab did stage their bodies, and al-Shabaab did take their bodies and call them martyrs before giving them back to the family. So lots of examples like this where sometimes it's not always clear, but one thing is certain, Vincent, the United States military is continuing to conduct these types of attacks. We saw one more airstrike just this week.
Carla, we thank you very much for your excellent reporting as always. That's VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb.